Morning is when the magic happens, the Stoic secret of high performance. The first enemy is noise. Why the world hijacks you before breakfast. There's something most people never question. Not because it's invisible, but because it feels normal. It greets them the moment they open their eyes. It doesn't scream, it hums. A buzz in the background of consciousness. It's noise. But not just the kind you hear, the kind you absorb. The kind that takes control without needing permission. It begins with a glance at a screen, a headline, a message, an expectation. It pretends to be important, but it isn't. It's intrusion, and the Stoic sees it for what it is, the first enemy of the day. You're not being informed, you're being hijacked, not violently, not obviously, but neurologically, psychologically, spiritually. Every alert, every buzz, every scroll, it steals your attention in fragments. And that's the trick. It never takes all of you at once. It chips away slowly, patiently, until there's nothing left but reaction. No direction, no center, just noise. The Stoics didn't battle enemies in the form of apps or alerts, but they battled distraction just the same. Seneca warned, "If you do not know to which port you are sailing, no wind is favorable." In other words, it's not the storm that throws you off course. It's the lack of course to begin with, and if you let the world speak first, it decides your destination before you've even chosen to walk. We live in a time where the external world is louder than ever, and the internal one is barely audible. Most people wake up and immediately hand over their mind to algorithms, headlines, strangers. They don't own their morning, they rent it out, cheaply, in exchange for stimulation. And they pay for it all day long in anxiety, fatigue, lack of clarity, compulsive checking, emotional volatility, and mental fog. That's the price of distraction. But most don't know they're paying it. The mind, like the body, is strongest when fasted, when it's not overfed with garbage the moment it wakes up. But instead of fasting mentally, people binge. They binge on noise, comparison, dopamine hits, urgency. They wake up starving for clarity and eat poison instead. And then they wonder why they can't focus, why they feel behind, why they feel tense for no reason. The reason is simple. They've allowed their most sacred mental space to be violated before they even became fully conscious. What would it look like if the first voice you heard in the morning was your own? Not a stranger's, not a demand, but your own clarity, reminding you who you are, where you're going, and why today matters. That's what the Stoics practiced. They didn't just avoid noise, they replaced it with inner instruction. Epictetus began the day with questions, not consumption. What is in my control today? What is required of me? What is beneath me? What can disturb me if I don't grant it permission? This wasn't a script. It was a sharpening, a rehearsal of sovereignty. And once you start your day from that place, a place of stillness, reflection, self-command, the rest of the world loses its grip. You're not pulled into every notification. You're not baited by every insult. You're not controlled by what someone else thinks should be urgent. You're calm, not because the world is quiet, but because you've already established your own frequency. And that frequency can't be touched by noise you didn't invite. The modern world will never stop trying to invade your morning. That's its nature. It wants your time, your attention, your emotion, not maliciously, just greedily. And unless you defend that space, you'll live every day reacting. You'll feel like you're chasing something, but you'll never quite know what it is. That's the tragedy of distraction. It's not just that it steals time, it steals meaning, because every minute spent reacting to noise is a minute not spent becoming who you were meant to be. So if the morning is your battlefield, noise is the first enemy you face. And the fight isn't won with force, it's won with awareness, with refusal, with deliberate space. You don't need to be aggressive, just unavailable. You don't need to shout, just stay silent. You don't need to check everything. Just check yourself first, because the one who decides what enters his mind decides what kind of man he becomes by the end of the day. That is the first rule of morning mastery, and that is the first weapon of the Stoic, the ability to ignore what does not deserve a reaction. The Stoic secret of high performance: don't start with a routine, start with a decision. Below is the full expansion with 14,500 characters, written in a continuous, cinematic, and rational emotional narrative. The tone remains introspective, elevated, and timeless, as if Marcus Aurelius himself were offering this lesson in private. Most people begin their mornings with rituals they copied from someone else. A list, a video, a recommendation from a book that promised clarity. Cold showers, green drinks, breathwork, journaling. They do the motions with discipline. They even feel a temporary sense of control. But deep down, they remain lost. Because before they moved, they never decided what they were moving toward. That's the difference between a follower and a philosopher. One obeys a script, the other questions its source. The Stoics never started the day with a task. They started with a decision, a commitment of character, a quiet assertion of identity. Who am I willing to be today? And what does that version of me require? That comes before the coffee, before the run. Before anything touches the body, something must touch the soul. That's where the day truly begins, in the decision to live by reason, not routine. Because a man can perform a perfect routine and still be mentally enslaved to distraction, fear, insecurity, comparison, or cowardice. A good day doesn't begin with action, it begins with alignment, and that alignment can't be faked. Most people don't know what they want to become, they just want to be less anxious, less tired, less behind. So they look for hacks instead of principles, tricks instead of transformation, and what they find is motion without meaning, ritual without resolution. The result is predictable. They burn out, not from effort, but from confusion. Because you can't sustain energy in a direction that doesn't exist. That's why Stoicism doesn't begin with doing. It begins with deciding. Marcus Aurelius never told himself to be productive. He told himself to be just, disciplined, focused, indifferent to what he couldn't control. He didn't seek to win the morning by force. He sought to enter the morning with conviction, not surface-level positivity, not rehearsed gratitude, but conviction built on reason. He reminded himself daily that he would meet liars, manipulators, and selfish men, and that his task was not to avoid them, but to remain unshaken by them. That is the decision a Stoic makes. To face the day not as a child in need of ease, but as a man prepared for fire. That's the part most people skip. And that's why they never feel grounded, no matter how many routines they follow. They never made the internal agreement that anchors everything else. They treat the morning like a to-do list, not a moment of internal governance. But how can you govern a day if you've never governed yourself? This is not about what time you wake up. It's not about whether you do yoga or read or run. It's about whether you have chosen with clarity the kind of person you are willing to be, and whether your actions are now in service to that choice. If they are not, then you are not free. You're performing a sequence. But the mind remains chaotic. The character remains unformed. And when the first real pressure comes, an insult, a delay, a sudden shift of plans, the cracks reveal themselves. The routine collapses. The clarity vanishes, because the body was trained. But the soul was untouched. This is why the Stoics were powerful. They didn't wait for circumstances to grant them power. They claimed it by decision, before breakfast, before conversation, before movement. They decided what to admire and what to ignore, what to allow and what to resist, what to honor and what to reject. That decision wasn't flashy, but it was final. And if your morning begins with that level of inner clarity, the routine becomes a tool, not a crutch. It serves the decision. It reflects the identity you've already chosen. It doesn't define you, it reminds you that's the right order. So if you want to start the day like a Stoic, don't reach for your journal. Don't reach for your phone. Don't even reach for your shoes. Ask yourself something far more dangerous. Ask, what version of me will show up in this day? And am I ready to defend him? If you are, the rest will follow. The actions will match the decision, and your morning will no longer be about copying someone else's path. It will be about carving your own, with discipline, with direction, and without the need for applause. Morning is when the magic happens, the Stoic secret of high performance. Morning solitude is sacred, but you keep killing it. There is a moment early in the morning when the world has not yet touched you. No voices, No notifications, no opinions, just space, stillness, presence. Most people have access to this moment, but they never hold it long enough to let it change them. They kill it before it breathes, and they wonder why their days feel heavy, why they always feel behind. The truth is simple. They're not being crushed by the world. They're being crushed by their refusal to be alone with themselves. Solitude is not loneliness. The Stoics knew this deeply. Solitude is not isolation. It's power. It's a place where you meet your mind before the world tries to shape it for you. But most people can't stand that meeting, so they reach for something. Anything. Noise, activity, content, tasks. The moment silence arrives, they drown it, because silence reflects, and reflection reveals. That's why so many avoid it. There's a modern addiction to motion, as if stillness is weakness. But that's a lie taught by people who fear their own thoughts. The strongest minds are not the busiest. They are the most rooted, the most aware. And that awareness is born in solitude. Not the kind you schedule, the kind you protect, the kind that appears in the early morning when the world hasn't found you yet. But instead of protecting it, you give it away. You open your phone. You check who needs you. You let someone else's urgency become your identity. And in that moment, your inner world closes. Not because you're weak, but because you never gave it time to open. And now, everything you do is a reaction. Your actions no longer come from vision. They come from tension. And you spend the rest of your day trying to fix what could have been prevented in 10 minutes of quiet. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, insisted on solitude. He wrote in his journal not to perform, but to think clearly, to untangle himself from the noise, to return to first principles. He wasn't running from others, he was returning to himself. That's the function of morning solitude, to remember who you are before the world tells you who to be. Most people don't understand how much power they give up by skipping this, because when you don't meet yourself in the morning, you walk into the world fragmented, pulled, vulnerable to distraction, insecurity, flattery, or offense. And all of that noise enters because the gate was left unguarded. Solitude is not a retreat, it's a preparation, a weapon. It clears the fog, it centers the soul. It reminds you that peace is not found in a place, but in a position, a mental one. And that position must be claimed before the world is awake enough to take it from you. If you start your day by running, even running toward good things, without first standing still, you betray yourself. Because what you skip in stillness will always return later as stress. And what you avoid in silence will find you again in noise. You cannot run far enough to escape what's unresolved inside you. You can only face it, in quiet, in reflection, in solitude. This is not about becoming a monk. It's not about isolation or detachment from life. It's about learning to create enough mental space in the morning to remember that you are not the thoughts that rush through you. You are the one who observes them. That shift from identification to awareness is the foundation of Stoic clarity, and it happens in solitude. But you must want it. You must fight for it. You must learn to be alone not as punishment, but as preparation. Because when you can sit in stillness and remain composed, your strength is no longer based on how quiet the world is. It's based on how centered you are when it gets loud. So tomorrow, when the silence comes, don't kill it. Don't outrun it. Don't scroll it away. Sit in it. Let it challenge you. Let it confront the noise inside you before the noise outside even begins. That's how the Stoic prepares. That's how the warrior trains without weapons. And that's how you build the kind of presence that doesn't just react to the day, but transforms it. Control your first input, or be programmed by it. There is something few people realize. The first thing you allow into your mind in the morning doesn't just influence your mood. It programs your operating system for the entire day. It sets the tone, the frequency, the direction of thought. And once that direction is set, most people never shift it. They carry it like a background code, reacting, behaving, deciding, all without understanding why. That's the hidden danger of your first input. It's not just what you see, it's what you become open to. Because attention is not passive, it's creative. What you allow into your consciousness becomes the clay your mind sculpts the day from. And if you hand that clay to the wrong hands, headlines, feeds, gossip, demands, then everything you build afterward carries their fingerprints. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." He didn't say the soul reacts, he said it becomes. There is transformation in repetition, and the first thought, the first image, the first message of your day becomes the base color of your psychology. Most people don't choose that color. They absorb it. They open their phones and see fear, conflict, noise, pressure, performance, comparison, or even worse, they see nothing real, just stimulus. Something bright, fast, addictive, shallow. And in that very moment, before they've spoken to themselves, before they've even taken a breath of clean intention, they've allowed a stranger to whisper into their mind, and they call that normal. But a Stoic sees differently. A Stoic understands that the mind is a temple, not a trash can. You do not begin your day by letting others throw their emotional garbage into your sacred space. You begin by guarding the gate, by choosing, by filtering. Because what you let in, you will carry. And what you carry, you will spread. Through words, through presence, through thought. Ask yourself this: would you allow a liar, a coward, or a manipulator to stand at the edge of your bed and speak to you first thing in the morning? Would you willingly listen to complaints, jealousy, insults, fear, distraction before you've even formed your own intentions? Of course not. But that's what you do every time you scroll through content you didn't choose. Every time you allow the default setting of your device to override the sovereignty of your mind. The Stoic mind doesn't reject the world. It filters it. It doesn't seek isolation. It seeks discernment. The question is not, should I consume anything in the morning? The question is, who do I allow to speak into my soul first and why? You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to sit in silence for hours. But you need to be deliberate. You need to remember that the first input enters your mental bloodstream with unmatched potency. It bypasses filters. It sets context. If it's noise, you'll carry noise. If it's complaint, you'll become reactive. If it's confusion, you'll drift. But if it's clear, grounded, centered, you'll walk through the day with a quiet authority that cannot be faked. The first input doesn't have to be a quote, or a book, or a prayer. It can be a question, a principle, a reminder. Something as simple as, what do I stand for today? Or what matters more than my mood? Or how can I lead, not follow, in the energy I bring into this world? These questions recalibrate the mind. They place your attention on what you control, not what the world offers by default. That is power. Not the power to control others, but the power to control your own state before anyone else even sees your face. We live in a world of content overflow. Everyone wants to influence you. Every app, every notification, every voice in the digital crowd wants your first moment of awareness, and most people give it freely. But you don't have to. You can be rare. You can be deliberate. You can start your day with inputs that build you, not fragment you. You can begin by selecting what deserves to enter your mind, and in doing so, protect the integrity of your entire day. That's not just a habit. That's identity. That's sovereignty. And that's the practice of a modern Stoic. Not to escape the world, but to face it having first faced yourself, clearly, consciously, and without permission from anyone. Type 1 to write the next topic, or type the changes you want. Você diz 1. O ChatGPT DC. Continuing with topic 5 of the video, morning is when the magic happens, the Stoic secret of high performance. Topic 5 is, don't meditate, confront. As requested, here is the complete narrative with 14,500 characters. The tone remains steady, rational, emotional, introspective, and aligned with Stoic thought. We've been taught to use the morning for calm, for stillness, for grounding. And that sounds noble. But for most people, it becomes a trap, a routine of spiritual avoidance, a meditation that soothes but never prepares, a quiet that never sharpens. They breathe deeply, close their eyes, and hope the world stays soft. But the world does not stay soft, and the Stoic does not ask it to. The Stoic confronts it. There is a fundamental difference between relaxing and preparing, between escaping and strengthening. The modern morning encourages you to find peace. The Stoic morning demands that you face war, not outside but inside. The war of expectations, the war of desire, the war of impulse, and the war of all that will try to shake your center once the day begins. This is why the Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. It wasn't negative thinking, it wasn't pessimism, it was defense, a mental armor that could not be penetrated by surprise, because they had already imagined the storm, accepted its arrival, and rehearsed their own unshakability within it. Most people start their day hoping everything goes well. The Stoic starts his day preparing for what he will do when it doesn't. That's the difference. When you sit in silence, don't try to block out reality. Let it in. Let it speak. Let it remind you that comfort is temporary and that your clarity must outlast it. Ask, what could go wrong today? What delay, insult, failure, temptation, or chaos might appear? And then ask, who will I be in the face of that? That's not anxiety, that's discipline. You are not worrying. You are rehearsing the strength to remain unmoved. Marcus Aurelius would wake and remind himself, you will meet people today who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. Not because he wanted to judge them, but because he wanted to recognize the test and pass it with dignity. He wasn't meditating to escape the world. He was meditating to stay free within it. And that's the purpose of the morning confrontation. You don't visualize a perfect day. You visualize a worthy you. The kind of person who does not collapse when things go sideways. The kind of person who doesn't blame, doesn't whine, doesn't lose control. The kind of person who acts from principle, not mood. But that clarity doesn't show up on its own, you build it. And the morning is where it's built best, before the noise, before the pressure, before the emotion floods the system. That's the hour for hard thinking. That's the space where you wrestle with your inner cowardice, where you look your fears in the face and say, I know you're coming, and I'm already ready. The reason most people break under pressure is not because they're weak. It's because they spent their mornings pretending the pressure wouldn't come, and so when it does, they're shocked. They're untrained, and they fall back into reaction. The Stoic doesn't fall. He braces, he absorbs, and he acts, not from panic, but from rehearsal. You don't need to fear the day, but you do need to respect it, because every day brings unknowns, challenges, triggers, and if you only hope they don't come, you will lose your composure when they do. But if you confront them in the quiet, before they're real, you will carry a strength that feels unnatural to everyone else. And here's the truth. People will notice. They will see that you are calm when others panic, that you don't get drawn into drama, that you don't react just because the moment demands noise, and they will ask what your secret is. But you won't need to explain, because the answer is quiet. It's found in the confrontation you had long before the rest of the world opened its eyes. So don't just sit in the morning to breathe. Sit to face the day before it faces you. Sit to challenge your weakness before life does. Sit to prepare the soul to walk through fire without flinching. That's not meditation. That's a form of mental warriorship, and it belongs to you if you want it. Energy isn't found, it's redirected. As always, below is the full narrative, 4,500 characters, written in a style that balances Stoic reason with emotional intensity, suitable for narration and steeped in timeless clarity. The world teaches you to look for energy, as if it's hidden somewhere, as if it's a product you buy, a supplement you take, a playlist you play, a motivational clip you consume. But that's a misunderstanding of power. You don't find energy. You don't wait for it. You reclaim it by stopping the leaks. Most people feel drained in the morning, not because they slept poorly, but because their mind is fragmented before they even start the day. 1,000 tiny holes letting strength escape, not in buckets, in drops. The moment they wake, energy begins to leave. One drop for worry, one drop for guilt, one for overthinking, one for comparison, one for unnecessary decision, one for checking messages that didn't need to be checked. And by the time they move, they are already exhausted. And so they think, I need motivation. But they don't. They need recovery from themselves. The Stoics didn't chase energy. They preserved it. They didn't ask how to feel stronger. They asked what was making them feel weak, and then they removed it. That's the real work. Not addition, subtraction. Energy is not something you wait to feel. It's something you protect by refusing to waste yourself on things that don't belong in the first hour of your day. That begins with cutting decisions. Most people burn energy not through effort, but through indecision. What do I wear? What do I eat? Should I do this or that? They start the day as if they've already been asked to solve everything. But the Stoic simplifies. He doesn't wear himself out with options. He chooses once clearly, and then he moves. Because motion matters, but not chaotic motion, directed motion, movement guided by values, by what matters, by what doesn't require thought, because thought has already been done. Every choice you make in the morning is either a vessel for power or a leak. And most people don't see the leaks because they don't respect how energy truly works. They think it's about hustle. But the most powerful presence is not loud, it's efficient, it's composed, it's light but rooted. And it feels different to everyone around you. Because you're not frantic, you're not scattered, you're not trying to prove yourself before 9 a.m. You've already claimed yourself in silence. That's energy. Not noise, not caffeine, not urgency. Most people think they need more time. They don't. They need less waste. They need less emotional reactivity. Less social media before their identity has woken up. Less rushing into the demands of the day without first deciding which demands are real. The modern mind is overstimulated and under-directed. It's not that there's too much to do. It's that too much is being allowed in. The Stoic filters, ruthlessly. Not because he's rigid, but because he values preservation. He knows that his morning determines how many hours will be truly his and how many will be stolen by distraction, emotion, and reaction. You want energy? Stop handing it away to things that don't ask for your permission, but still get it. Reclaim your bandwidth, not just in technology, but in thought. Every time you give your mind to someone else's timeline, headline, demand, or stimulation, before you've earned your own center, you drain yourself. Slowly, silently, consistently. And then you wonder why you're tired, why you're irritated, why you feel like you can't think clearly. It's not weakness, it's mismanagement. Your mind is not a storage unit, it's a force of direction, but only if you allow it space to gather, to align, to quiet down enough to focus like a blade. And the quietest hours are the sharpest. If you waste them, the rest of the day becomes dull. So don't ask what will give you energy. Ask what's taking it. Ask what you're tolerating. Ask what's allowed to enter your space without earning the right. And then remove it, gently but without apology. Because once the leaks stop, what remains is natural power. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's unmistakable. And the world recognizes it, even if it can't explain it. That's the energy of someone who is not distracted, someone who knows where they're going, and someone who doesn't leak their strength just to appear productive. Success begins with rehearsal, not reaction. Most people wait for the day to tell them who to be. They walk into it unarmed, uncentered, undefined, hoping that when the challenge comes they'll rise, that when they're tested, their best self will appear. But the Stoic knows better. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your preparation. And that preparation doesn't begin in the moment of conflict. It begins long before, in the mental rehearsal of who you've already decided to be. Epictetus taught, first, say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's the structure. Identity first, action second. But the modern mind has reversed it. Most people don't act from identity. They act from pressure, from urgency, from mood. And then they wonder why their behavior feels out of sync with who they think they are. There is no alignment without rehearsal. And that rehearsal doesn't begin in front of an audience. It begins in the silence of the morning, when no one is asking anything of you yet. When you are free to shape your posture, your presence, your principles, without resistance. That is the moment to walk through the day in your mind, to anticipate the resistance, the conflict, the doubt, the emotion. Not to fear it, but to prepare for it. to condition your reactions before they're required, to train your soul not to flinch. You don't wake up and guess who you'll be. You wake up and decide, again, every morning. And that decision is not just a mental affirmation, it's a rehearsal of behavior. If I am interrupted, I will remain composed. If I am insulted, I will remain principled. If I am tired, I will remain disciplined. That is the internal language of someone who doesn't want to live on accident. People talk about high performance like it's a personality trait, but performance is a consequence of prior alignment. Not skill, not speed, but self-command. And the morning is the safest space to build that command, because the world hasn't arrived yet. No one is challenging you, which means you can challenge yourself without noise, without ego, without defense. That's where real preparation begins. In voluntary discomfort, in imagined resistance, in conscious mental weightlifting. And the beauty of this practice is that it builds familiarity. When you've seen the challenge before, even in your mind, it loses power. It becomes part of the landscape, not an emergency. So when the pressure comes, your nervous system doesn't panic. It recognizes the terrain, because you've already walked it in the morning, without fear, without reaction, without needing to be rescued by motivation. Most people walk into the day hoping for ease. The Stoic walks into the day trained for difficulty, and here's what happens when you do this consistently. You stop being surprised by life, not because you're cynical, but because you're mentally prepared. You've already anticipated the interruptions, the delays, the emotional spikes. And so you no longer live in reaction, you live in rhythm. You respond from clarity, not chaos. And people notice. They may not understand it, but they feel it. That quiet discipline, that untouchable posture, that rare, almost ancient stillness. And that stillness wasn't born in the middle of the day. It was born before sunrise, in mental rehearsal, in self-direction, in the quiet decision to not just know who you are, but to become that person repeatedly, especially when the world gives you reasons not to. The modern mind is obsessed with performance, but performance without identity is always shallow and fragile and temporary. The Stoic doesn't care how the world defines success. He defines it by one standard. Did I act in alignment with my values, regardless of the pressure? That standard begins in the morning, not in the results, not in the praise, not in the outcomes, but in the commitment you make alone to live from principle, and to rehearse that principle until it becomes instinct. That is the kind of success that cannot be bought. It cannot be taught in a course. It cannot be faked in front of others. It is forged slowly, intentionally, in the rehearsal of the man you're willing to be, every single morning. Victory has no applause, but you'll know when you've won. There is a kind of victory that doesn't come with applause. No one will post about it. No one will congratulate you. It won't go viral. And yet, it might be the most important win of your life. It happens early, before the sun is fully up, before your phone starts vibrating, before anyone expects anything from you. That's when it happens, quietly, without spectacle, without witness. The Stoic calls this mastery of self, and the one who reaches it doesn't need to announce it, because it's felt deeply, unmistakably, inwardly. It begins when you move through your morning without betraying yourself, when you don't grab your phone out of compulsion, when you don't let noise inside your mind before your own voice has spoken, when you don't react to thoughts, but observe them, when you don't perform for the sake of control, but act from the core of who you already decided to be. And when that happens, you won't need the world to tell you you've done something right. You'll feel it, not as a high, not as a rush, but as a quiet, grounded certainty, a kind of internal weight that centers you, like you've entered the day wearing armor that no one can see, but everyone can sense. Most people wake up chasing a feeling. They want to feel productive. They want to feel focused. They want to feel in control. But feelings are unreliable guides. They shift, they betray you. The Stoic doesn't chase feeling. He chases alignment. And when he reaches it, the need for stimulation vanishes, because he's no longer seeking clarity, he's walking in it. That's why the Stoic's morning has power, not because of the tasks completed, not because of how early he woke, but because everything he did came from a place of inner order, a decision made before action, a principle that shaped motion, a rehearsal that replaced fear, and a commitment that didn't ask for recognition. This kind of victory is not flashy. It doesn't look different on the outside, but it feels completely different on the inside. Your breathing changes, your thoughts settle, your attention narrows, and everything that comes after, the noise, the work, the challenge, it hits you differently. It lands on someone prepared. You don't have to fake discipline when you've already lived it in the first hour. You don't have to pretend to be calm when your calm was forged before the world even woke up. And you don't need external structure to guide you when your internal one has already been built, piece by piece, thought by thought, choice by choice. This is not motivation. It's not about hype or momentum or hype-beast routines. It's about the truth, that the world is chaotic, and without a centered mind, you will always live on its terms. The Stoic refuses that. Not through rebellion, but through preparation, through clarity, through sovereignty. And that's what morning offers you. Not just productivity, not just focus, but sovereignty. The chance to remember that you are not here to react to the world's tempo. You are here to walk in your own. The victory is this: you started the day on your terms, not the world's. Not the phones, not the markets, not the algorithms, yours. You were deliberate, you were grounded, you were unavailable to chaos. You were in command of your space, your time, and your thought. That is mastery, that is freedom, and that is the Stoic secret. So if your morning feels calm, purposeful, rooted, if you feel like the person you meant to be has already shown up before anyone saw you, then you've already won. Even if no one notices, even if nothing big happens, even if the world stays loud, because the reward for self-mastery is not applause, it's not admiration, it's not even results. The reward is peace, and once you've touched that kind of peace, you no longer chase anything. You just protect what you've already earned. The kind that lingers after the final word. No cliches, just calm power. The world will keep trying to rush you. It will pull at your attention. It will ask for pieces of your mind before you've even chosen what to think. It will tell you that urgency is a virtue, that speed is strength, that reactivity is intelligence. But you know better now. Because the strongest thing you can do is not to move faster, but to begin from stillness. The Stoics didn't need more time, they needed more clarity. And they knew that clarity was never found in the middle of chaos. It was found before it, in the early moments, in the quiet decisions. In the first thoughts of the day, the ones you either claim or surrender to someone else. You don't need more willpower. You need fewer leaks. You don't need a better plan. You need a firmer posture. One that begins before the world speaks and remains unmoved long after it does. That's the secret. Your morning doesn't need to be louder. It needs to be yours. Because if you own it, if you truly take back those first moments, the rest of the day will follow. And if this spoke to something inside you, don't let it pass quietly. Let it turn into action. Subscribe if this gave you clarity, and share your voice below. What part of this morning practice do you already live? And what are you ready to reclaim? Let the discipline begin with your voice.